You know that feeling when you sit down to work on your business and suddenly you are frozen? Or when you spend like 3 hours perfecting your website instead of reaching out to a potential client? Or maybe when you change your offer because one person asked a question that triggered your panic response. That's not laziness. It's not lack of discipline. What's actually happening there is your nervous system is running the show. I'm Erin Trafford, and this is the Narrative Advantage podcast, where we talk about building a business that doesn't break you, where we get real about the messy interaction of entrepreneurship, mental health, and actually having a life you want to live. So today we're going to dive into 3 specific signs that your nervous system might actually be sabotaging your business. And here's the thing, I am not going to tell you to just push through. I'm not going to tell you to get over it, because that is bullshit advice that keeps you stuck. Instead, what we're going to do is name what's happening. We're going to understand why it's happening. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what actually you should do about it. So if you've been wondering why you can't seem to move forward, even though you know what you need to do, this one is for you. So let's get into it. All right, so let's just start by really setting up what is going on with the nervous system. I have talked about this at length, so we're not going to go too much into it in this episode, but there are 4 specific nervous system responses, and they are fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. They're known as, your F responses because they all start with the letter F. And entrepreneurs, I find, having been one for the last decade or so, I firmly believe are especially vulnerable to a particular subset of nervous system reactions. Every human body is capable of experiencing all of them, and we all come with our own set of big T trauma, little t trauma, panic responses, all kinds of things, right? Like our own psychology. So, and I am not a psychological expert, but this is really important because as I started to see these kinds of responses in myself, I started to notice, other entrepreneurs also have these. And I noticed this as I was coaching and mentoring and working with even people in large corporations. I can see it. So fight is, it's pretty obvious. Like that's where you become more aggressive. Flight is when you run from the situation. It's an avoidance. Freeze is when your body believes that maintaining some sort of stasis is the safest thing for you. And then fawn is one that I don't talk about a lot, but I do see it happen, especially in the coaching world, is where you, for lack of a better phrase, pander because you think that acceptance, like social acceptance by someone who you see as acceptable, is going to keep you safe. So this can result in your boundaries becoming blurry and all kinds of things. So I don't talk about fawn a heck of a lot because there are so many different things that go on with that particular response. But the 2 that I think are the most significant for entrepreneurs and solopreneurs in particular are flight and freeze. And I talk about those 2 because, to be honest, those are the 2 that I seem to feel the most often in my business. So one thing when you're looking at the nervous system response, and is this actually a physicalized response, a neurosomatic response to what's going on versus a strategic response to what's going on, is to get in touch with your body. So those of you who have been longtime listeners, who have been following me for a while, if you're on the YouTube channel, then you probably don't know this because the YouTube channel is new, but I am a certified yoga teacher now, and also have gone into the the channel of yoga that is more related to somatics. And the reason I have done that was actually quite self-serving, is because I know that in order for me to identify in my own self, am I in a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response, or am I actually making a good business decision right now, is that I needed to be able to get in touch with my own body. So the somatics and the movement practices for me, the breathing exercises for me, are part of that commitment to me asking that question and ascertaining the answer. Is this happening only in my body as a physical neurosomatic response to an outside trigger, or am I actually having some rational strategic business thought? So that's something that you can do for yourself, is if you have a movement practice or a breathing practice or a meditation practice or something like that. As an entrepreneur, I actually think it's quite essential. And not only to calm your nervous system down, because all of those things do that, but so that you can start to feel what is happening in my body. I'm going to put a link in the show notes and the description box below to an episode I did that's going up on the YouTube channel. I think as I'm recording this, it's going up tomorrow because I have a few little edits to make, but it's all about how to have hard conversations and in your business. So hard client conversations, hard team conversations. And I got really, really honest about a hard conversation I had in the last couple of weeks and how I used these neurosomatic tools to ensure that I didn't go into fight mode and that I didn't go into fawn mode, that I maintained my integrity and my boundaries, and I got the outcome that I wanted. And it was all because as an entrepreneur, I am now mature enough to know, okay, hold on, this is going to be a tough situation. It is going to trigger me. There are going to be safety cues here. I need to be in my body in order to get through this. So in that video, it's like 10 minutes, 11 minutes or something. I will link it below. I didn't do a podcast version, so it is just on YouTube. You can see more about that process. So let's talk about the three specific, things that I notice entrepreneurs do the most. And certainly these all come from personal experience as well. I'm speaking from my own, I'm pulling from my own experience here as well. So the first sign that I want you to look for, like the symptom that your nervous system might be running the show, is that you are in what I call sit and wait mode. So what does this actually look like in behaviors? Well, it can look like you're planning but never executing. It can look like waiting, quote unquote, for the perfect time, the perfect amount of knowledge, the perfect conditions, the perfect amount of research. To that end, I have worked with folks who research endlessly. They never seem to have enough knowledge, but I don't know is typically how that sounds. I just need to know. I need to see the beginning and the end in order to do anything. That is a sign of nervous system dysregulation. It also, this is a sneaky one, but it can also look like you believing or convincing yourself that scrolling and watching more TikTok reels or Instagram reels or YouTube shorts or whatever on this one thing is actually learning. And it's not, okay? That is not. That is an act of actual sit and wait mode. That is a very sneaky behavior that is your nervous system being like, oh, I'm just going to consume one more 30-second thing and then I'm going to have all the answers, right? It's all the same behavior wrapped up in a different bow. Okay, so why does this happen? It happens as a freeze response. So you might think that that is a strategic pause, and maybe it is, but the likelihood of it being a strategic pause is very low. So what that actually is you're in freeze response. You are frozen in time because you believe that standing still until something else happens, that is, never gonna actually happen, you're never gonna get to that point, is gonna keep you safe. And it's most often tied to a fear of visibility. It's also most often tied to perfectionism as a protection mechanism. So there is an illusion that having more information about something, being able to see the full picture crystal clear before moving forward, is going to keep you more safe. And so it can manifest behaviorally as this need to control. It can manifest as, again, the need to amass information. What happens in your business is you spend all of your time controlling, researching, scrolling, waiting, and never actually doing anything. And so then you wonder why 6 months has gone by and you haven't hit your revenue goals, you don't have anybody in your pipeline, you don't have a clear vision of actually what you want to do, you just have a clear vision of maybe that you know a bit more about the subject matter. Your nervous system, for whatever reason, has been programmed to think that taking action without full perfect, and I say that with air quotes, knowledge is dangerous. So it's doing its job. Your nervous system is trying to keep you safe by keeping you small. And what you could really do in those situations, again, is get in touch with your body. Ask yourself, honestly, what is going to happen to me? Will I be unsafe if I show up on the internet without perfect knowledge? Will I be unsafe if I admit to the client that there's an answer I don't have? What happens? And the answer is usually very little happens. You're fine, right? So a couple things that you can do if you discover that this is happening is name what is happening. And as soon as you name something, you claim it. So you can say, oh, this is a freeze response. As soon as you bring that awareness to the behavior, just say it out loud, write it down in your notebook. Oh, I caught myself in freeze today. I spent 2 hours researching down a ChatGPT rabbit hole instead of just sending a few emails. I was in freeze mode today. And then give yourself some forgiveness and grace, right? Give yourself some forgiveness and grace. The other thing practically that you can do, and I do this myself, I have to do this myself, is if I catch myself in freeze mode, I don't take action immediately. I say it out loud. I'm in freeze mode. I did this last night, by the way. I did this last night. I'm in freeze mode. Give myself some grace. And then I book time the next day, 10 minutes. 10 minutes that I give myself to take imperfect action on the thing I was freezing on. In my case, it's sending a few emails to folks who I have been delaying sending emails to, and I can't really understand why. Rationally, it doesn't make sense. So I've got the 10 minutes booked actually right after I'm done recording this podcast. And then the other thing you got to do is start moving your body and asking yourself as you're moving it. Maybe you go for a nice brisk walk. Maybe you do some breathing exercises, do a few, sun salutations, get on a treadmill and, do some hill workouts. I like doing that on the treadmill with the incline and my weighted vest, and I watch YouTube videos and I sweat and I love it. And as you're doing that, just ask yourself a little tiny question is, where am I frozen in my body right now? Your body might start answering you. Eventually it will. It'll say, oh, your knees are locked up. Okay. Send some love to your knees. I find when my lower body is locked, my hips to my knees, I'm a runner, so my hips to my knees, when they feel really locked up, it tells me that I am avoiding action or I'm afraid of something. Your legs are very much attuned to panic responses. So if I'm panicking, I do notice my hips act up. If I find that my neck is sore or my chest is sore or I'm feeling kind of like throaty or something like that, then I do notice, oh, I'm holding back saying something I really actually should be saying. So your body will tell you eventually, and this is why the physical part of this practice is so important. The second sign, so the first one is endlessly scrolling and researching imperfection. The second sign is similar, but it will be obsessing over details that don't move the needle forward. So what does that look like? Spending hours tweaking your website, perfecting the brand colors, rewriting your About Me page, redesigning your logo, feeling like you can't get anything perfect until it looks absolutely perfect from a visual perspective. Here's an interesting thing about this, is that you might think that that's also freeze, but what that actually is fawn. Because what you're doing is you are conflating your value and your readiness with the visual representation of your brand, which is a mask, by the way. We talk about this on the transmission series. It is a mask. And you are more concerned with how it will be perceived by somebody who you are hoping will validate you based on the way your website looks, your about page reads, and your logo is positioned. That is a sneaky ass fawn response. It is a false sense of productivity because you're actually chasing a metric or a KPI that isn't going to pay you or grow your business. Detail obsession is procrastination with purpose, but the purpose is to get validation from an external source when really your validation needs to come internally. So you are using those details to hide. you are using that mechanism of redesigning, tweaking, endless fixes to again control something that is actually not controllable. And it feels like you're doing work, but it's really keeping you invisible. It's really keeping you invisible. So I used to have this thing when I would get really overwhelmed with Story Studio Network, when things were really tumultuous, is I would go in and I would batch a whole bunch of graphics for Instagram, and I would spend like 4 days creating like 2 months worth of content, and I would feel so good and relieved at the end. And then I would never post it, because at the end of it all, I am not actually a fan of batching. I don't like showing up, writing today what I'm going to post in 2 months. I hate that approach. And if you have been a follower of mine for a long time, you know that. If you have worked with me, you know that we work through how to get over the batch mentality. So, I used to catch myself batching stuff just so that I could feel busy and so that I could feel like I was doing something really good for my business, and oh, look how productive I am. And then it ended up actually being worse, because I wasted all that time, I wasted all that effort, and I still didn't end up having anything to post. Fawn response. I was trying to look like something to someone who I wanted to get validation from. I don't know who that someone was, but it was in my head. Okay? So how do we get over it? Again, it's the active awareness. Now I catch myself. If I am doing something in Canva's the best example, because I am terrible at graphics. So like the whole YouTube experiment, me making thumbnails, if I find myself spending more than 10 minutes on one thumbnail, I'm like, whoa, mama, is this keeping me visible or is this keeping me hidden? Write the words, center the photo, upload. You can always change it later, right? So I asked myself, is this anxiety about it looking a certain way? Or is this a strategic decision that I'm making to spend this much time doing this, right? B- work shipped is better than A+ work that never makes it off the deck. So that's how I get over that. Again, it's all about setting a time, acknowledging it. And when I say setting a time, is like, I will not spend more than 7 minutes on a YouTube thumbnail. No way, Jose. Not until I have reason to do it. And I don't feel like I ever will have a reason to do that. You feel me? You know what I mean? I know you're probably nodding and being like, oh my gosh, Erin, I've done all these things. I'm saying this to you because I do all of these things. You might think that I don't. I do. I just have developed tools to get over it. The third sign is a biggie. And this one is what I want to say, when your nervous system is taking over your business. And this is so sneaky. So if you do this, give yourself all the grace in the world. I have started to give myself all the grace in the world, is reactive business decisions that look like speedy offer deployment. I just said a lot of words. Okay, so let's back up. This gets triggered by the following things. Someone asks you about your pricing and you immediately discount what you do. Someone maybe doesn't understand what you do, so you get on a call and they're like, I don't get this. So you immediately feel like you need to go back to the drawing board and like redesign everything that you do. Or you customize on the spot for that one person. You see someone else's business model and you can start to see how their business is operating, and it makes you really jealous and you want that. And so you start to look at your own business and redesign it to fit their model. It can also look like you're changing your messaging every week to change your positioning because you aren't sure that the clients that you were going after last week are the clients you want this week. You say yes to clients who you know deep inside aren't the right fit because you're in actual panic mode. Or here's the big one. You spend all this time creating a whole new offer instead of selling the one you already have. Okay? Why does this happen? It happens as either a fight or a flight response. It can kind of be both, right? You're fighting because you're showing up and you're trying to prove. You've got this like aggressive, you don't understand me energy, I'm gonna fix it energy, right? It can also be flight because you're avoiding, this is the flight, is if you make the whole new offer instead of selling the previous one, you're running away, you're avoiding fixing the one you've already got, right? Can you imagine if you took that to like, you have a car and you get a flat tire and you're like, well, this car's done. Take it to the scrap heap. I'm going to go buy a whole new car instead of just replacing the tire. Like, that's kind of what it is. It makes no rational sense. Fix the tire. If you uncover that the axle is broken and the car is a write-off, okay, that's a totally different situation. But if all you've got is a flat, that's an easy fix. You don't need a whole new car. It is also, this one is a biggie. It can also feel like fawning, where if you look at someone else's business model and you're like, oh, I need that. This is what happened in the 2001s when all these coaches were like, the only way to make money online is to do it my way. And then people fawned after them and copied them. And then their businesses didn't all work because not everybody is designed to do business the same way. That's a fawn response. It's a nervous system reaction, right? Here's at the crux of what's happening here though, whether it's a fight response, a flight response, a fawn response, freeze, whatever, is that your nervous system, and this is a huge one for entrepreneurs, your nervous system is conflating business challenges as safety emergencies. And you are reacting to a perceived threat and not actually responding to how you want to build your vision. Your body doesn't know the difference, so you need to train it to know the difference. And I've done this myself. I mean, in the last month, for those of you, again, who have been following for a long time, in 2022, we ran a beta program through Story Studio Network when I was trying to figure out what I wanted it to be. And it was called Ready to Record. And I paid all this money and we got a special brand made up. It's actually really cute. I really like it. And maybe I'll bring it back one day. There, I just did it. Maybe I'll bring it back one day. And we ran it once and we got a few long-term clients out of it. And we learned a lot about, it was an accelerator to launch a podcast and your owned media and how do we do it and how do we script and how do we create efficiencies and whatever. And the world has changed dramatically since we ran it. So a lot of the content I would have to redo now because things are different. We have AI, there's tons of different stuff. But a couple months ago, I started to feel like a bit of panic rising because typically oddly, Q4 for Story Studio Network is a slow month. We don't often sign a lot of business. We have a lot of conversations that tend to turn into business in Q1 and Q2 of the following year. And because 2025 has been such a weird year in business, I started to get panicked because certain things that I thought were going to happen didn't come together on that side of the business. And I have found that in order to hit my revenue goals, I've had to change the weighting of my income and my revenue to more consulting side versus Story Studio, which is the opposite of what I had anticipated at the beginning of the year. Like there was just a lot of things in my mind where I could have very easily blamed myself for having made a whole bunch of strategic errors. And the reality is I didn't. I had all the right conversations. I talked to all the right people. I fought a few fires that came up along the way. And here we found ourselves at the end of September and I didn't have as much traction as I wanted to have. And here's what I did is instead of looking at my pipeline and thinking, okay, how can I make a really cool project that fits the parameters of what we're already doing with an existing client or potentially a new client, what I did was I went to my team one day and I was like, we should revive Ready to Record. It made no sense. It was going to be so much work for an unproven offer that no longer fit with how we operate that company, right? It is an offshoot of my brand. It is not a side hustle, but it is not my primary focus of income anymore. My consulting is, and it's also part-time hours for my whole team. So it's like this really fun thing that we also do. And I was like, wait, it has to be more. It has to be more. We need to relaunch this program and we're going to make a big splash. I was like, I don't have the capacity to do that. My team doesn't have the desire to do that. We'd have to redo the whole program. It didn't make sense. This was me making a reactive business decision because I felt unsafe. It wasn't a strategic decision when I really sat down and thought, wow, if we spend a month redoing this, what would be the outcome? Could we reasonably generate the same amount of work, income, impact that we would if I just went out and got one more enterprise level story studio client? No. Would we be attracting the wrong kind of buyer to grow Story Studio into what we know we want it to be? Yes, we would. We would be attracting people who could never afford to actually work with Story Studio. So we'd end up having this bifurcated business model, which is not at all what I want. So I'm telling you that in all honesty, because that happened to me like a month ago. And I just sent my team a note and I was like, guys, that was a mistake. Take it off the agenda. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that right now. And I feel so much better about it. And now I know, okay, wait, I'm going to focus my energy on, getting one more enterprise level client locked in for February of next year, which is way more realistic. And it'll take way less time and it'll be my time and my team can focus on delivering, to the clients we already have instead of trying to build this other thing. So there you have it. 3 signs that your nervous system is running your business and what to do about it. And here's what I want you to take away. If you recognized yourself in any of these, just know you're not alone. Naming it is the first step to changing it. And if this episode hit home, send me a DM on Instagram and tell me which resonated with you most. I genuinely want to hear from you. And if you found this helpful, make sure you share it with another entrepreneur who might need to hear it. And shout out, please like, subscribe, comment, and hit the notification bell over on YouTube. You've been listening to the Narrative Advantage podcast. I'm Erin Trafford. Thank you so much. I'll see you next week right here on the feed. Until then, build the business and remember, you don't have to choose between success and sanity.